According to this book, there was once a YouTube channel that was reviewing a current KamenRider series at the time. The channel was new, and so was the series, so the channel thought to do a week-by-week review of every episode. But as time moved on, the channel was unable to do week-by-week reviews of said series, and has yet to have been concluded on the channel. That is, until now. Hello and welcome to KamenRider Blackman. And before I start slurring my words, I'm about 85% sure this is our final review of the year. Not that this was meant to come out in December, because this was actually meant to come out in November, but shit happens. But yeah, this is most likely our final review of the year. And we're finally getting back to the very start of this channel. And if you've been with this YouTube channel from the very beginning, then you know that I first started off my channel by reviewing the very first episode of this show. And that is today's review, the 20th anniversary of the Heisei era, at least for KamenRider, and the final season of the Heisei era for KamenRider, KamenRider ZO. And wow, yeah, my very first YouTube video, it was reviewing the first episode of ZO, and finally getting back to it. Finally getting back to it. And man, do I feel so different about it now. It's like, that's one thing I definitely should do once. React. Anywho, idea for off screen. Anywho, today, KamenRider ZO. Let's start off with the very beginning, with the opening. And it's a straight banger. Like, I love this song. I love how upbeat and techno it is. Talking about the future and the present. And I like the parts where you hear English, like Feel It, and Nexus Future. And hands down the chorus, Over Quartzer. Like, dude, this is one of my all-time favorite KamenRider openings. And it's just that awesome. It's straight up one of the best. So, also, this is a fun fact that I learned a couple of days ago. This song is a duet sung by Sota Tsuyoshi, I believe, and Issa, who played KamenRider Blackman in the OVER QUARTZER movie. That's cool. But, another fun fact, Issa also did the opening for Faiz, to which I personally find also very awesome, because I like Faiz's opening. And so now, let's officially start with the show. Episode 1, Kingdom 2068. We open to a monument of our titular character, which we'll get back to later. Our story really begins with Sogo, our titular character, on his way home from school. Sogo is a high school senior who's close to graduating, but instead of taking his college entrance exam, wow, that word, just both those words together. Anywho, instead of going to college, Sogo says he doesn't have to take it because he's going to be a king.
Inconceivable!
Yeah, king of what exactly? I have no idea. And neither does he. Our more important character we meet, Iwai, it was, as he acts like a stranger, warning Sogo to be wary of things out of the ordinary, which are giant robots. And out of the ordinary happens as a semi-giant CGI robot chases Sogo to kill him, and then another CGI robot saves him and takes him to the past. For some odd reason. okay, I guess to explain to him about the future and all, but still, if I was to, like, if it was to get him to believe that they're from the future, the presence of giant robots should be evidence enough. Like, mind you, it is the Toei universe where Sentai exists, as well as giant kaiju fights and all. But, I don't know, who knows about this world's continuity? But anywho, the pilot of said robot, Tsukiyomi, shows Sogo a glimpse of the future that starts off the first episode. 50 years in the future, Sogo becomes the great demon king Omazeo, a tyrant who possesses the powers of all of the Heisei Kamen Riders, and had already taken over. But real quick, let's talk about Omazeo's design, and how it's straight badass. Like, for one, black, gold, and gray all look awesome. Those are all colors that look great together, because it's just so menacing, and he looks like a straight up dictator. Not just a straight up dictator, like he's Thanos. Like, honest to God, he's straight up Thanos. When you first see him, he uses the Infinity Stone and the Reality Stone to kill people. Bruh, it straight up hit my mind when I just realized this. Like, Omazeo is straight Thanos, and this entire season is him collecting all of the Infinity Stones, and towards the latter half, he becomes the Infinity Gauntlet. Like, I'm not bullshitting when you think about it. Like, not kidding. Anywho, Tsukiyomi and whom we'll meet later, Gates, both come from that future and have traveled back in time to prevent Omazeo's rise to power, which begins when Sogo transforms for the very first time. So now, since we know about our protagonists, let's talk about our antagonists. The Timejackers, Wool, Aura, and Schwartz. They come the hell out of nowhere, which makes me ask questions about most parts of this show. One being that in the future, superpowers exist, or they can actually happen. Yeah, but the Timejackers just screw around with history, finding people at their lowest and turning them into twisted versions of Kamen Riders called Another Riders. Now, the monster designs in this show are, in all honesty, they're quite spot on. Like, the very first monster we'll meet, Another Build, that looks nice, but let me see, what's a monster that I know will be my favorite? Oh my god. There are a couple of monsters that we'll see a bit later that are just fantastic looking. Like Another Ryuga, Blade, freaking Drive. Like, the Another Riders are great looking monsters because, honest to God, they're if Kamen Rider meets Cenobites, because they look awesome, and it's probably because of the monster, and on some of them, the human-like faces that they have, that makes them all the more freaky. Like, and my favorite one is definitely Another Blade, because of how huge it is, but we'll get to that later. And so, back in 2018, the first Another Rider we meet is, well, not Another Rider, but Another Kamen Rider. In a previous one, it's Kamen Rider... Oh, wait, no. I was not fully reading the sentence. It is an actual Another Rider. That should be capitalized. Anywho, back in 2018, professionalism, the very first Another Rider we meet is of KamenRider build. When Sogo tries to encounter it, Waz appears again and presents him with his driver. So now we have our Rider and our future Demon King, KamenRider ZO. So now let's get to talking about his suit, which has been a long time since I did. And this is one of my favorite base forms. I really like the ZO's base form. I like how it's black and there are colors like magenta and I want to say some parts of pink and a very light shade of purple on it, which are all colors you don't really see too much of, but they all work nice. I love the helmet, I love the kanji on the visor and on the forehead for Kamen and Rider. I really love the base form. I also like his weapon too, the gun that can turn into a sword. That looks sweet. And I guess while we're talking about ZO, let's talk about Gates too, because he transforms first anyway. Gates' suit is nice too. Pretty much reminds me of ZO's, but it's red. And I like the visor there. And his weapon is also nice, though it's a little weird. Like, why it's a little weird? Because, well, first, his weapon is an axe that can turn into a bow and arrow. That's awesome. But the handle is crooked, to which I looked up before was to do more damage when chopping wood. So I guess as a battle weapon, sure. I just always thought it was weird why the handle was just curved. But yeah, Gates' suit is not bad. And you want to know something I just realized too? ZO kind of reminds me of his suit. His base form kind of reminds me of a clock, and Gates' suit reminds me of a stopwatch. Like, let me think about it. I'm sorry, I just want to look up to compare for a moment. Like, it's because of... Oh, shoot, no. Not a clock. Like, yeah, Gates' suit reminds me of a stopwatch. In ZO's suit, I'm getting the vibe of a straight-up Rolex because of the watch link in the middle, like, going down. That's a very nice design. I like that. And with another rider we'll get later, it looks sweet there too. Like, because his watch links going down is like a digital watch. But the point is, I never thought about that before until now. Like, I really like that. The main rider kind of gets the feel with that chain like a Rolex. And the secondary rider is like a stopwatch. I like that. It's nice. And so, this show is pretty much Decade 2.0 because each episode are two-parters. Yeah, it's drag. And with said two-parters, they make it a tribute to a past season. So the first and second episodes are the KamenRider Build tribute, and we meet Sento and Ryuga again. And back in 2017, while Tsukiyomi and Sogo were time traveling, they crash landed into 2017, which of course is when Build came out. Now, as established in Heisei Generation's final, which is indeed canon, Build takes place in its own separate universe. And as I explained away in my Build review, to me, Build's universe assimilated itself into the main universe for KamenRider. So that's a probable explanation for Build being here. However, what I find a bit strange is the skywall being present in the background. With that there, my brain tells me this show's confusing time travel with multiverse theory, to which most definitely it does confuse time travel with multiverse theory. Anywho, while fighting another Build, it's set up that another riders are connected to the year said rider's season took place in. For example, once another Build is created, KamenRider Build ceases to exist, and Sento and even Ryuga start losing their powers and memories of their own show. But, in turn, one way to beat them is to travel back in time to said year using their ride armor. To which, spoiler alert, that rule gets thrown out a couple episodes in. Like, if you have the matching ride watch to the another rider, you can beat them regardless. So it kind of makes no point to time travel. Yeah. Needless to say, this show has a fetish for padding. Because every episode is 2 parts. We have to reach a climax later than sooner. And when you're watching the show and thinking about it, yeah. Look, before we go any further, let's actually talk about the collectibles for this season, the ride watches, and the driver too while we're at it. Now, the ZQ driver itself, I like it for what it is. It's pretty nice. And the ride watches they're one of my favorite gimmicks in KamenRider. Like, they're basically like, what's that thing I want to call them? They remind me of that thing like pocket watches. That's what they remind me of. Pocket watches. Like, they remind me of pocket watches, and 2, they're like icons from Ghost and Ranger keys combined together and came up with this. Because when a rider loses their powers themselves, like, the powers turn into ride watches. So yeah, they're basically like Ranger keys. And that's how, well, Zio and Gates would receive them for their form changes. Okay, so now we're talking about ride armors, the KamenRider based forms in this show. They're hard to like and hard to look at. Some aren't as bad as others, but the ones that aren't too bad are hard to look at. And I'm thinking about the X-Aid armor alone, just with the Gashikon bumpers and the hair. I honest to God thought I'd like the wizard armor, but I'll be honest there, the only thing I like on it is the cloak. But dear God, the the pauldrons. Having KamenRider, like, having forms based on previous KamenRiders, that's not a bad idea. But the fact that someone thought to have each season's collectibles as pauldrons, the X-Aid armor is already hard to look at because the hair and bumpers, but X-Aid now has 2 gashats on his shoulders, and there's almost too much going on. And with Wizard, details on the suit I can't already make out, but there's already like 2 giant rings on his shoulders. That's a bit cumbersome. And oh my God, the Gaim armor. The Gaim armor is the straight worst because there's too much going on. It looks completely ineffective in a fight because you got lock seats hanging up here like a tree. You got shin guards facing sideways. Shin guards face like, you got gear on your... There's just too much going on. Hell, freaking Kuga doesn't have any collectibles to make pauldrons out of, but his suit still doesn't look that great. Hell, and we don't get all of them either, to which, thank God, because the blade armor... Oh my God. The shoulders on that are just cards. No. Oh my god, thought about Ride Armors too now is just which ones do I think aren't too bad? Just, well, let me think. Ones I don't think are too bad. I really would have liked it if we got the Agito armor because that's not ugly as hell. But sadly, we don't get that. Oh, and one more fact before I forget. Gates starts off having the Ghost and Drive ride watches because he stole them off of Omazeo. So, with every tribute, we get guest stars coming back for two-part arcs. And so, the first was Sento and Ryuga for Build. And we get KamenRider's Brave and X8 for X8, and so on. Oddly enough, this is the first arc we're talking about, by the way. And there are, admittedly, a couple strange ones. Like, for episodes 5 and 6... Forze and Fies share a tribute together. Like, the first half is more about Forze, and the second half is about Fies. Weirdly enough. Like, I don't know why. But Gentaro's actor doesn't come back for the Forze tribute. Probably because around the time the live action Bleach movie was happening and coming out, and Sota Fukakushi, I'm saying Gentaro's actor's name, Sota Fukakushi or something. Anywho, Gentaro must have been unavailable filming Bleach to come back for Zio. But apparently the only actor from Forze they could have brought back was the teacher with the suspenders. And kids from the Forze Wizard tribute, no, from the Forze Wizard movie, who are now all older. So, were they held back 5 times? Because they all look like they're in their early 30s now. Just, how does the Japanese school system work? Anywho, the Fies tribute is especially sus because both Fies and Kaiksa come back for this tribute, and they try to redeem Kusaka's character. Now, I know I haven't reviewed Fies yet on this channel, but I have seen Fies, and I do remember Masato Kusaka, and he ain't worth taking back the next snap. By the way, I'm not going to bother talking about every tribute because, let's be honest, they are and aren't filler without much to mention except for, hey, this person comes back. That's it. But wait, some commenter might say, what about the O's tribute? Dan Kurito comes back and he's another O's. I don't care, that arc was dumb. Like, I know a long time ago I would defend some cases and episodes, but looking back on them now, no. Just, no. I'm much more critical now when I'm paying attention, so, no. But at least we know now that if AJ wasn't a traveler, he would be a politician. Although now that makes me wonder, why doesn't Sogo just become a politician? Which now also makes me think, Japan doesn't even rule under a king. I looked this up. Japan's ruled under an emperor. The friggin' Sogo doesn't even know. He wants to be royalty, yet he doesn't even know which country to be in for royal status. What? Anyway, episode 13. It's the Ghost Tribute, and we get the return of a passing through KamenRider. To my annoyance, KamenRider Decade. For some odd reason, someone wanted Masahiro Inoue back for the season because I don't know. Everybody wants to fuck Tsukasa. That's the only real reason I could think of. Now, despite that I don't like Decade, it was a no-brainer to update his arsenal, because he can still change into past riders, except now, officially, he can go up to Neo Heisei. So, I'm going to be fair and not hate on that, because that makes sense for an anniversary season-wise. And also, the Neo Deca driver, that gets updated too. Just wanted to throw that out there. I think I quite like it more now because it's magenta. Like, it always looked nice, but having it be magenta and updated with symbols from Kuga up to build, it makes it look a lot more prominent. I like it. And besides, Decade's already magenta, so having magenta driver too, it's nice. It doesn't break up anything, and I don't know, it's not too plain like white. Despite the fact that I like the color white. Like, no. My real complaint is why? Who asked for Decade? What does he contribute? Like, you know how people complained about Beast Morphers having Vengex as the main villain the entire time, calling it a tacked on thing? Yeah, this is that here. Tsukasa was clearly brought in for fan service, and literally after these next few episodes, he doesn't show up again until halfway through the second arc. And just, for anyone who does like Decade, please try to defend him to try to make me understand as to why he was brought back. First, with this question, how would Waz and the Timejackers just know how to contact Decade, and why would he be bothering to help the villains with no real reason whatsoever?
It just raises too many questions.
Oh yeah, and he has a ride watch that he just gives away to Gates, despite their enemies.
And there you are.
Excuse me?
I was just now wondering if there's anything that could actually push my headache into a full-blown migraine, and there you are.
Okay, so now let's talk about the Decade armor. Not just how it looks, but its special feature of doing final form times, which don't feature really not any final forms. Like, for Build, it's a Rabbit Tank Sparkling. For Ghost, it's Grateful Damashi. For, what we'll see too, like for X-Aid, it's Mighty Brothers Double X. So they'll literally be the two suits together with the bulk armor on. And so, the Decade armor itself, it's not the worst looking thing ever. Like, the colors are nice, it's bulky, it's basically reminiscent of Decade. However, tablet face, like, straight up, he has a tablet face, and the final form times 2 are just parts of the forms I just mentioned, like super forms and mid-season forms, with bulky Decade armor on, and tablet face. Like, I don't even know how to make of it. It's like, it's like you're taking armor that was already nice and bulky, and yet you're trying to make it random and bulky. It's like, I don't know what to make of it. And he also gets a sword too, called the RIIDER Saber, which doesn't suck. I like the sound it makes when it says, hey, say, hey, say, hey, say, hey, 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 like that. But the weird, it's just weird. You start off with something nice, but then you just got weird, and got a tablet face too while you're at it.
Episode 15, Omazeo starts to act, sending his minions from the future to speed up things. Sogo even gets an opportunity to meet his future self face to face, and proceeds to get his ass kicked.
Episode 16. This episode makes me like some parts and question some parts of it. What I liked about it was Sogo. He is what was doing it for me about this episode. What I disliked from it was everyone else around him. Because after meeting face to face with Omazeo and not wanting to become him at all, Sogo decides to give up being a rider and a king by having Gates destroy his driver. That was nice. Sogo may come off as foolish, but he's not stupid. He understands the weight of the situation, and meeting his future self really showed him the bigger picture to decide, I don't want this if that comes with it. So, giving up his dream? He did it. And I love how serious about it. I love how serious he was about giving up being king, and he stuck with it. The problem was everyone else.
With Omazeo now out of the picture, the Time Jackers are now free to continue their schemes, but stupidly, they decide they have to kill Sogo to keep Omazeo dead.
Okay, it would be one thing if they were thinking, what if Sogo changed his mind? But on the other hand, Tsukasa's part of sending him to the future to scare him straight worked, so further antagonizing Sogo is pointless.
And Sogo becomes Zeo again, not just out of desire to do good, but because it's the villain's own damn fault.
Everyone takes a step back in this episode too. Everyone got what they wanted, Sogo to give up being king, and instead insist him to continue his dream.
Honestly, the only person in this episode who doesn't act out of character is Waz, who still wants Sogo to be Omazeo, and had a new driver for him. Where did he get that, by the way? Wait, better question. How did he make it?
And so, that concludes the first arc. Now, before closing out, this video entirely, let's talk about the 1.5 episodes. From this up to episode 17 or 18, I believe, because we do see one more character in the last one, they have 5 or 3 minute episodes where they have nothing to do with the plot. Hell, I remember the one for X-Aid where they decide, hey, let's blow up Toei Studios. And then they actually blew up Toei Studios. Yeah, the 1.5 episodes. I checked out a couple of them. They're just nonsense. Straight nonsense. Apparently for the Fai's tribute one, Kusaka and Takumi were bleeped out a couple times. But just nonsense. And so, at this point of the story, Heisei Generations Forever takes place here. And it is indeed canon, because there's no mention, while there is no mention of it in the show, Sogo does get the Kuga and the W ride watches. I don't like either of those forms, as I've said before, so moving on.